In the last lecture, we've discussed about if, elif, else statements. Now it's time to take a look at for loops. One of the reasons a computer is so useful is that it can repeat operations multiple times very quickly. In programming, a for loop represents one possibility to execute repetitive tasks. In fact, it takes a range of values and assigns them one by one to a variable and executes a block of code once for each variable. You'll see many times in Python documentation the term iterable. So let's see what does iterable mean. In Python, many objects are iterable, meaning that we can iterate over each element in that sequence. All we need is a collection of items and the possibility of getting one item from the collection once. Iterating is a way to get items out of the collection one by one. Examples of iterable objects are lists, strings, tuples, sets, dictionaries, and so on. We use for loops to execute a piece of code for each iteration. The syntax of a for loop is the following. There is the for keyword, then a temporary variable, in this case item. This isn't a keyword. I can have here any name I want. Then in, and that's a keyword, and the name of my iterable. This can be a string, a list, a range, a dictionary, and so on. And then we have the for block of code. Of course, this block of code must be indented with 4 spaces. Each line of code below the for statement that uses the same level of indentation belongs to the for block. Then one by one, item takes a value from my collection, from my iterable object, and inside the for block of code, I have access to that value. In this example, this code will print the elements of the list one by one. Let's see some examples. In PyCharm, I'm going to create a new file. Let's say for1. Don't use reserved words. So it's not recommended to use the for name for your file. That's a reserved keyword. I create a list, let's say OS from operating systems, Windows, Linux, Mac, and Android. We'll have a long discussion about lists, but till then, you should know that a list is created using square brackets and comma between elements. And now for, this is a keyword, item, I could simply write only I, so this is a temporary variable, in, and now the name of my iterable, in this case OS, colon, this is mandatory, and now using an indented line, so using 4 spaces, PyCharm has automatically added 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, I write print, and I'm going to use an F string, so F, and the string is the name of the item in the list is, and between curly braces, item. In fact, this is a placeholder for this variable. And let's run the script. You can see how item takes a value from my list one by one. There is no problem if I write here double I and here double I. It's the same. We can also iterate over a string. A string is also an iterable object. So str1 equals I learn Python programming. And now for char in str1 colon, and using an indented block of code, let's say print char. Let's run the script. And it printed each character of my string one by one. By default, the print function adds a new line after each printed line. So if I want here, I use and. This is an argument equals, and I'm replacing that default \n with, let's say, a minus sign. When I run the script, it will display something like this. So the first item of my collection, then a minus sign, the second item of the collection, takes a space and a minus sign, and so on. Let's see another example. Let's create a list called numbers equals, and here some values. Let's say 0, 5, 9, 11, 90, 130. And the for loop is for I in numbers, print I. In fact, it will print the values of this list. Now, what if I want to check for even and odd numbers? So I'll use a nested if. This means an if statement inside the for statement. Here I need to make a test. If I mod 2 is equal to 0, that means that the remainder of I divided by 2 is 0. And I is 0 at the second iteration, 5, 9, 11, and so on. Here I must use a colon, and this line of code must be indented because it belongs to the if block. 1, 2, 3, 4. Else, this has the same level of indentation as the if keyword. Print, and let's say here f odd number, and between curly braces I. And here f even number I. And I'll run the script. We can see how it displayed odd numbers and even numbers. At the first iteration I is 0, it compared the remainder of 0 divided by 2 with 0, and that's true, so even number 0, 0 is an even number. At the second iteration I is 5. If we divide 5 by 2, we have a remainder different from 0, so it executed this line, the else block of code, and it displayed odd number 5. The third number is also an odd number, and so on. Let's move on and see how we can iterate over a range of numbers. The range function returns a sequence of numbers starting from 0 by default and increments by 1 by default and ends at a specific number. So here, instead of numbers, I'll use range of 100. In fact, the range function will return a sequence of numbers starting from 0 till 99, so 100 is excluded, and for each number in that sequence, it will do these tasks. I've displayed all numbers from 0 to 99 with the message if that number is an odd or an even number. We'll use ranges a lot in other scripts, so I want to show you other examples. Let's say for I in range of 4, 20. Print I. The range function will return a sequence of numbers from 4 till 20. 20 is excluded, so the last number it will print will be 19. And the third argument is a step. I can go in steps of 2. And this means from 4 included to 20 excluded in steps of 2. And this is the result. There is no problem if I have here 40 in steps of -2. So from 40 to 20 in steps of -2. 40 is included and 20 is excluded. That's enough for the moment about for loops, and in the next lectures we'll dive deeper into ranges and loops.